Hello, everybody. My name is Roy Cohen, and I'll be hosting this week's edition of the Community Forum Show. Again, it's one of the virtual shows that we have to do from home because the studio is closed because of the pandemic. And so we have to do the virtual thing, and I'm learning to do the Zoom skillfully. But today, my interview will not cause me to press a lot of buttons to show pictures and stuff, because we're just going to have a nice conversation. And the conversation, my guest is David Lurie, who is running for select board or selectman in the town of Stoughton. And we have a whole bunch of different things to talk about. And Dave is from precinct 6, and he's running for the select board. He's been a Stoughton resident for 27 years. He's participated in master plan sessions approximately 8 years ago. He was elected a town meeting rep 6 years ago, appointed to the finance committee 4 years ago. And now he's taken on the chore of running for select board. And I wish him well. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Troy.
Okay, my pleasure. And hopefully everything will go nice and smooth. And why don't we start off with any more introduction material that you might have that we might work with?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of background. I'm 59 years old, and so there's things before I got actively involved in town, obviously. And my background is from Connecticut. I grew up and in Connecticut, the Wallingford, Connecticut area, and then I transplanted with my wife at the same time into southeastern Mass, and we settled here 27 years ago. So we've been living here, raised my family, 3 kids. We're just on the cusp of empty nesting. We're hoping that goes well. And yeah, so raised the kids, brought them up through the public school system, and here I am.
Well, that sounds like a good background to run with. And I wish you well with it. Why don't we start off with talking about, you have several points that you wanted to bring up, the master plan versus gentrification. Why don't we get into that, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. So back, as you alluded to, with the master plan sessions that happened, there was a lot of problems in the town. You know, if everybody remembers, we had eyesores in downtown. We had a horrible high school, not to mention, the Fire Station 1 on Freeman. We've had all kinds of areas in town that needed a lot of focus and attention and impetus to bring, into a nicer looking town. And when we sat down in those sessions, there was easily 120 or more people at the senior center. And we sat in these round tables, and it was nice. There was everybody got to write down their priorities, 1 through, X number of list of items, and you'd compare your notes with everybody in the room. So what they did was that they would stack the things that overlap the most would rise up to the highest priority and work its way down the list based on the fewest items that would match. So I said, wow, everybody was hopeful and optimistic that all these wonderful things could happen. And the first thing that dawned on me is, I agree with everybody on all these items, except how are we going to make them happen? What would it take to actually get them to fruition? And that's when I started to get actively involved with town meeting, because I didn't understand too much at the time how to enact change. So I thought it would be a good first step to get involved with town meeting. So I became a town meeting rep. Learned a little bit about how votes were taken and how motions looked and how projects got approved, and then thought, well, wait a minute, there's really no guidance to town meeting in terms of how to pay for things and whether or not the town could afford those things. So my fear at the time was, well, how do we avoid hurting the people who lived as residents in the town, just all of a sudden achieving master plan overnight? If everybody just said, wave a magic wand and all of a sudden master plan is all of a sudden beautified our town, that it would cause harm to the people with fixed income and low income in the town. So I thought, well, let me get involved with the finance committee And at the time, Howard Hanson was the moderator, and he was gracious enough to appoint me to the finance committee. So I was that was my sole focus on the finance committee, was how do we get all of this stuff done and do it what would be the things that we could afford, and how would we pay for them? So I went to different state organizations like the Massachusetts Municipal Association, talked to a lot of people in the DLS, which is the Division of Local Services, which is just an arm of the DOR, and I learned a lot of things along the way. So I would always press on those questions. How do you know how much a town could afford without without having people picking up and leaving the town? And I picked up a lot of great ideas, and I've been trying to present those over time. And as a finance committee rep, while you have a certain level of influence, at the end of the day, you can't really make a policy change in the town because that happens at the board level. There was a past board member, which I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he actually said, Dave, he goes, your ideas sound interesting. I don't really understand the mechanics of what you're talking about, but maybe you should run for the board. So I took it, I listened to what he said, and I said, you know what? I think you're right. I said the only way in which you could actually take something that you learn about over time and try to institute them is really to participate in enacting them. So that's kind of what drove me to this point in time. I'd say that would be like the number one reason, was to see master plan through without harming people. And that gets to that gentrification question. Gentrification in and of itself isn't a bad word. It's how you go about gentrification, because gentrification just means you're doing a master plan. You're putting forward projects that are going to make an eyesore, or take blight and work blight out of your town by bringing in nice businesses, residences, a place for people to come and be proud of. So in order to get people back to being proud of the town, I wanted to make sure that the type of gentrification we went after was going to be less harmful to the people who already live here. So I've got a keen eye on watching what happens to our census. If people are fleeing our town, I want to understand why they're fleeing and what are the things that we could do to bring them back in, and do it with an affordable plan, and one that fits within good best practices. The best practices, by the way, that achieve a lot of things, because if you do it the right way, you get a much better interest rate on your money. So if you have to borrow, you want to make sure that you're just like anybody. If you go to borrow, you want to make sure you're getting the best interest rate. Well, you have to have a good credit rating.
Oh, sure.
Well, the bond agencies give you a credit rating. And if you get a poor one because you're careless with how you do your projects, capital planning, it's going to come back and hurt you, because they're going to increase your cost to borrow. So there's a lot of aspects to being careful about how we go into this area of master plan and gentrification. And my focus is on making sure that it's done with best practices and less harm to the people who already live here.
That sounds like you've done your homework, and it's good to hear. Just for curiosity, when you were at these public meetings, do you happen to recall some of the items that came out on that list?
Oh yeah, the master plan list.
Yeah, sure.
The one is the biggest one was the high school. The downtown and the high school was almost like in parallel. They were almost like competing project ideas, and they both were very, very high up. And we got the
downtown and the high school.
The downtown and the high school were way, way up.
Well, we got one of the two. What about the second one?
The second one, yeah, that's I look at what's being talked about around the current leadership and all the things that have happened over the last few years. And I don't believe that the focus in the next board is going to be solely laser focused the way the past boards have been on the downtown, believe it or not. And I'll tell you why. First of all, we've already taken care of the first thing that a board can influence, which is new zoning. We've just launched and presented through the planner, the town planner, something that's going to be called the SCD, or Stoughton, what's it called? The Stoughton Stoughton Center District, SCD.
Mhm.
That's in the works. Now, zoning is probably the main thing that you can do to an area to try to improve it. So that's one thing that there's really not going to be a need to focus on because it's already in the works.
Right.
Secondly, acquisition of property. Look how many things we've purchased in downtown and things that we don't even have a purpose for. So whether when it comes to like, gee, should we be buying up more property? I think we've bought enough property. I don't think that the next board should be focused on how many more properties we could buy in the square. Thirdly, we've seen a lot of focus on trying to get very rough on the volunteer committees and boards, trying to, make it very strong language has been used. There's been a lot of acrimony with the relationship between the board and other committees. And I don't think that's productive. I think that it needs to be more collaborative. I think it has to be more productive. I think that everybody really wants to achieve the same thing. And that if you believe that your ideas are more important than everybody else's in the town, I don't think you deserve the privilege of getting consensus and moving the town in the direction that everybody wants to see. So
Who do
that's,
you,
yeah.
you're mentioning that there's been some bad attitudes towards some of the boards that also are volunteer boards. Anything specific that you care to talk about?
No, I really don't think it's necessary because I think the people who pay attention already know who I'm talking about. So I don't think it's necessary, and I certainly don't need to look at the past. It's really more about going forward. But I hope to bring a more positive attitude towards how much commitment that these volunteers actually do for the town, and bring about consensus. Because I'll tell you one thing, my focus on the finance side of things is going to be so important because all of these projects that have been bubbling up and it's actually scaring people into no votes. When people see that there's a very logical and methodical way to get things to work and doing it with best practices with the money, you'll
Mhm.
take the fear out of these projects and you'll get a lot more consensus and yes votes. So I look at the main message, which happens to be around money, and seeing that as a catalyst for actually getting these projects off the ground. Because if people can see that we could afford something, I think that the fear will be taken out of those projects and we'll actually see positive votes on things in a more logical pattern of purchasing and moving forward.
How do you view the projects in town? Are you pro business or more pro residential in order to raise money?
Oh, so yeah, well, I don't really look at it that way. I don't have a preference in terms of who do I favor. I thought you were going to take a different approach with that question around zoning, but
No,
we'll
I'm
leave
not.
zoning aside.
I am very
Yeah,
concerned about in the industrial commercial base in the town of Stoughton and filling up a lot of
yeah,
the empty lots that are, let's say, up in North Stoughton. This
yeah,
has always been a favorite subject of mine, even when I served on the board, which was many years ago, when we finally were able to get the MWRA to give us water at that particular time. Um, we we um, we had projects like Reebok, who are no longer here, coming into town, and the Board of Selectmen at the time, as I was the chairperson, voted 2-2 to grant them a water connection so they could build. I mean, that to me was the most absurd
yeah,
thing I've ever heard in my life, that
yeah,
we would turn down or not encourage a business to come into town that's going to represent maybe $1 million a year in tax revenue. So I
yeah.
was fortunate enough to be able to break the tie, and we got them in here. And that happened with several projects. But what are your thoughts when?
Yeah, no, the areas like you're talking about, it just it makes me scratch my head as I drive through the town because it looks like, certain industries were able to, well, in that one, by the way, is terrific. The SRA developed that technology drive and we picked up that beautiful, I mean, it's just a gorgeous building when you look at it and it's still gorgeous. You wonder how are we going to get somebody into that building to start bringing back those tax revenues you're talking about?
Right.
Because you think right off the highway, beautiful construction. I think they've got two elevators in that building, it's just a gorgeous location for any business to set up shop. So I'm hoping, I think we even have a billboard associated with that neck of the woods, if not on the roof or somewhere really close to there.
It looks like
So
there's
why aren't we
some
using it?
renters in there. It
There's
appears.
some renters in there, but we're not bringing in nearly as much as we could be, I
No,
think.
no.
So I think that the future board has to look at those areas like North Stoughton. It's funny, I just did a video. I do these little field trips around town with my camera,
Yeah, we're
and
going to
that's
talk
the
about
stop
that
I
too.
made. Yeah, I stopped
We have
at,
to talk
the
about it.
Reebok building.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. I seem to get some attention on it, and I just want to show people that I'm not just all, mean-spirited with money, that I really do look for positive changes in the town when it comes to development, economic development, but I just don't see all our eggs being in the downtown basket. I don't even think that the future town is good is really about a downtown. We look at like almost like romantically at these old movies of the downtown area of being so focused, but there's other parts of town that are important, and South Stoughton just as much so. I know we're putting in a sewer, and there's a lot of land down there that could be developed, and there's so much that could be done in this town. I also think that some of the zoning areas around residential and business, it's very confusing to me that these industries kind of pop up in the middle of neighborhoods, and
Mhm.
I'm like, how could that? I don't know how that happened over time, but I think that some things could be focused on around having business set up in an area that looks like it's proper for business and other parts that look proper for residences, and do the same thing, which is bring up our base of business and bringing in residents. And I think that has to be looked at.
David, I encourage you to think about the square as one of several projects that need to have attention paid to it. There is something like 60 or 70,000 cars a day, or I'm not even sure that's still the case with the pandemic, that pass through the square, and you're not getting a good first impression when you see holes in the ground or a theater that's sitting there empty when it should be opened up or rebuilt or whatever. I'm just really concerned about the hole in the ground and the Malcolm and Parsons project. I know there's some motion. It's starting to, I think, take place. But I definitely, if I were sitting on the board, I would definitely make it happen. And I'm hoping that you'll, if you're a member of the board, will take a good serious look at the hole and get it filled up so people passing through will take a good look and say, wow, what a nice place.
That would be funny if I was lucky enough to get voted in. The next day, they had a groundbreaking for the Malcolm Parsons project. I'm wondering how much credit I would get for
That's
for
all right.
Malcolm Parsons. I
You'll
don't know
get
if
a
I'm
round
really
of
allowed to claim that, but
you'll get a round of applause from me, sir.
well, the thing is that the work that's gone into getting that, it's, by the way, it's 2 years past. They could have had that hole in the ground filled at least 2 years ago.
Well, what
There were
stopped?
a lot of missteps. There were a lot of missteps that caused it to be delayed for 10 years now, which is how long we've been with that hole in the ground. But it is going to be there is nothing left to do at the board level. Now there might be some areas in which you might have to do a little bit of intervention to get something moving along while they're starting to get the first shovel in the ground. But all the work has already been done. It's not really going to need to be a concerted effort by the next board to fill that Malcolm Parsons project, because it's literally at the we're literally at the 1 yard line with getting that done. So it's really, I don't think, going to be where a lot of my energy is going to have to be spent
Well,
personally.
I have to tell you that although it may be rumors, I've heard stories. Unfortunately, I'm on the outside looking in, but I've heard rumors that members of the board have really hassled some of the other boards who have the responsibility of seeing the project underway, giving them a hard time, and
Well,
just preventing it from happening should be a goal.
that's why it should have been done 2 years ago. It
Well,
would have been done 2 years ago had it not been for all the acrimony that was created and the obstacles that were created by the past boards. So
right.
that's not going to be something I'm going to be involved with doing. I'm going to be looking to partner with the other committees and boards to move the town forward, not to create obstacles unnecessarily. And so, so you touched on a couple items in downtown. So I really do think Malcolm Parsons is not going to have to be energy spent on that. It's just to, watch it, just rejoice and celebrate the fact that it is actually going to happen in and around the date of the election. I think you're going to see things happen there.
I hope
But
so.
the theater, yeah, I do know that the theater is important and near and dear to your heart. And I know when I first moved here, I used to I've gone to the theater before, so I know about what it was like before it became abandoned. And I can see what was going on with it since then. I could share a little bit about some background I have. So I had an interesting start in my young adult life when I finished college. I was working in home improvement for a home improvement company. When you remember in the Roaring '80s, we had all kinds of investments done on real estate, and I was riding the wave with that and doing and having a lot of fun at it when I was in my early 20s. But I wanted to get what I went to college for was broadcast communications and theater. So I was more interested in like producing, theater and directing theater. I actually studied black box theater. I actually produced one act plays in the theater. I did a lot of stuff like that. I participated in cabaret. There was so when I got done with college, there's this troupe called, they were called Shakespeare on the Green in downtown New Haven. A woman at the time, her name Amy Seaham. Okay, now she now lives in the Midwest, but she was in New Haven as a professor, and she was because of all the success she had with Shakespeare on the Green, she was attracting young families for picnics on the Green. Elderly people of all ages would come and enjoy Shakespeare while they were enjoying the park. And she got so much goodwill from the people in New Haven and in the business community in New Haven that a major real estate and developer in downtown New Haven gave her an abandoned restaurant that was right on the Green. It was like, it had to be like a 20,000 square foot restaurant, and literally let her occupy that building to run cabaret theater. Did improv theater, comedy nights. We did cabaret. We used to bring in a caterer, and they would serve like soup and salads, and beautiful, nice little menu. I actually got. She brought me on as a director of operations, so I actually got to watch from the ground up somebody who ran a theater with volunteer actors, use that to spawn goodwill within the community, pick up all kinds of opportunity with investment from the investment community to be able to do more. And I was a volunteer as a director of operations to take care of the permitting with the building department, the health department. I was able to get a permit for a liquor license. I was the permittee on the establishment called Performance. It was called Performing. What was the name of the place? I think it was called Performance. I think it was called Performance Theater or Perform. I can't remember the second word of it, but so we ran this thing for about 2 years, and we were filling up every weekend. We'd have the place jammed with people waiting to get in, and we were making money for the nonprofit. It was a nonprofit that figured out that the way in which you attract investment in that kind of arena is to actually put on shows, to do production. That's how you create the investment into your idea. So if you wanted a state theater, you wouldn't just find some nonprofit that just went around to all the big money people in Boston and all around and say, hey, would you give us some money? You're not going. Who's going to look at it? You're going to look at your operation. They're going to say, all you do is hire lawyers and accountants. And what are you doing though? What production? Where's your productions? There are none. So
Well,
the town needs to demonstrate that it knows how to put on a production and use that as impetus to getting the investment on things like a state theater. So that's where I
David,
but the
I have
biggest
you
problem.
on, I have you on tape. Once
Yeah.
you're elected, I think they should form a theater subcommittee with you as the head.
There,
And because you,
I'd be happy to just kind of get involved with talking to people who would do I couldn't do it myself, obviously,
no,
right?
of course not, a committee.
So a committee, sure. I'd love to participate in that. I know how it's done. I've watched it with my own eyes as to how you make it work.
Yeah,
And I know that the way we've tried to do it does not work. And I knew it was never going to work from day one because of the way that they went about it.
yeah. Well,
So,
I remember going to the theater to see movies that they had current movies in there at a reduced rate, so you didn't have to go to Brockton or wherever to pay the big prices to go in and see the movies. And
mhm.
they also had live entertainment in there. And the group that I was part of, I remember opening up for the oldies show that took place in there. It's great potential. We don't have to talk about parking or anything like that, because the use of that theater would be basically at nighttime, and that's when the whole square opens up.
Yeah,
Uh, but
yeah.
you need interest, and I would hope that with your telling me now, with your background and things you've done in the past, you're the man. So,
I'd love to be a part of the answers and not part of the wrong way to do it.
no, you'll be part
I
of the
see if I see
opportunity.
something that's wrong, I don't want to get excited about something when we're trying to do it the wrong way. It's so hard to say, well, of course we all love to see a theater in the town, but why would we sink money into it because we can't find investment because we're doing it the wrong way?
Well,
I can't get behind the methods that we've used. It's very hard.
you need to find the people who have the deep pockets and looking for a place to place the money. Maybe you can get a hold of one of these recent megabucks winners with the billions of
Well,
dollars and have them come up with a few million to finish the project.
well, they
It has to be done.
okay.
That's my
I
opinion.
there you go. So
Um,
we'll work on that.
we got a couple of other things I wanted to cover with you, Dave.
Yeah.
Another golden opportunity that we have is the railroad station. I mean, that's a beautiful building, and needs to be opened up.
Yes. Now
With
that we own it, yes, absolutely. It's one of those acquisitions we made. I think we picked up some parking with it too, which is a nice thing.
yeah,
So I've mixed feelings about the railroad station, but since we own it, it really doesn't matter about whether it was a good or bad idea because now we own it. So now what do we do with it? And the thing that kind of irks me about the way we go about buying stuff is that we buy these things without having a purpose once we own it. There's no purpose for these buildings. We
no,
buy it and say, all right, now let's figure it out later.
well,
And so it's very, notice how difficult it is to get money approved by town meeting or any other source. Or CPA, I don't care who the source is. If you don't have a purpose for the building you bought, it's very difficult to get people to put money into it.
well, that's kind of
That
foolish.
one, well, why didn't they have like, here's the purpose for something, let's go get it. And then on day one, after we own it, let's start moving towards getting it filled with the activation of the site for what we really wanted there.
Right. Well,
So that's kind of like, so that was my attitude about acquiring something without having a purpose, because now it's like, well, we have to go take a survey on what the town thinks we should do with it, and then you got decision by committee, and you end up with paralysis with over trying to decide. So putting that aside, I do have an idea. So I'll throw one of my ideas into the opinion hat to see whether or not somebody will draw my idea for the railroad station.
all right,
So
Dave, let's hear it. Let's
you
hear it.
ready for this?
I'm ready.
So the so you want to get money for the state theater, but we haven't been able to demonstrate that we could actually draw interest of a crowd to a show. So what you do is you open up the railroad station as a theater, but instead of calling it a black box theater, you call it an oak box theater. It's a gorgeous building. If you ever gone inside, I think they even filmed a movie in there about 2 years ago, and it's a beautiful space. It's very, like, the atmosphere is almost like an old Western kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's got a big enough space. I looked at, just from my, eyeballing it, it looked like it could hold about 40, 50 people if you set up the right kind of like raked seating to look like at the stage that's at the floor level. You aim the audience towards the tracks from inside the building. If you could picture the seating towards the tracks, where the stage would be in front of that room. Did you ever notice there's like a room in front, in uh between the large room and the tracks? I don't
Yeah,
know
they
if you ever
sold,
noticed. There's like
I
a
think they sold
it's
tickets
like
in
a
there. They sold tickets in
oh,
there.
okay. So, yeah, so it's like a rounded part of
Yeah.
the building,
Yes.
and it's got and there's a doorway to that. So the way I picture it is that you turn that into a green room, where you could do set changes. You could store, costumes in there, makeup, do all that kind of thing. You could even set that up as like a little office for like an artistic director to start, organizing whatever it is they have to organize to get rehearsals in and do that kind of thing. So now you start to fill up the space because it's very easy to fill up a 40 or 50 seat theater. And you can do a lot of innovative things with a space like that.
Sure.
Now, when you have like wine and cheese events where you invite some of those banking and investment bankers and capital people, you invite them to the shows, and now they can see how great you are at putting on shows. Now you start to raise money for like a state theater. So you could actually knock out two birds in one stone. You get programming for the railroad station. You could demonstrate how much of a commitment Stoughton really has towards theater. And by the way, it could be anything. It could be comedy nights. It could be music. You could do art exhibits. You could do any number of things with the space once you have it for a nonprofit to run as a performing arts type thing. So that's my concept for that space.
All right,
I don't know
David.
if they're
I hate to say
you
this to
know
you, David. I hate to say this, but you've just come up with the idea for a second committee chair job.
the railroad station Oak Box Theater Committee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got some good ideas, and it sounds like you've got the background where you've done it before. Got a couple other things, Dave, I'd like to talk about. One of which is maybe we can get quickly through it, opening up the town from a COVID lockdown. This seems to be a problem all over the country, or all over the world. Now that we're having some vaccines available, maybe things might lighten up a little bit. How do we open up the town from the lockdown?
You know where I think the leadership is on this topic is the school committee. The school committee made a huge decision to commit to having in school children coming in school to get their education. They've done a lot of work to try to get these schools clean and sanitary so that the virus couldn't spread. And I believe they've had pretty good success with not spreading the virus. So I think what we need to do is take their lead and start to incorporate those opening up events through things like through these volunteer committees that need to use the great hall at the town hall.
Right.
To start finding out creative ways to allow town meeting to actually be a live event again. I think it's a travesty that, and now for a good reason, obviously, a pandemic is a scary thing, but the way in which our town is being our committees and our boards have been running with these virtual meetings, I just think it's very sad because I just know that so much more could come out of these meetings. So much better debate could be coming out of live discussions of these topics. And I just think a lot of good ideas and good debate is squelched with electronic online meetings. So
Well,
I think looking at the schools and figuring out how to crack the code on doing it safely is, I think, going to be essential for 2021,
well,
especially like you said, as the vaccines start to come out.
the
Yeah.
schools seem to have it. I guess from what you're saying, the schools have it maybe under control, but that doesn't open up the rest of the town. I mean, look what we have to do with the show. Normally, we're at the studio. We have several people that are working doing the production, and but now we're stuck doing it. Although I'm not complaining, I'm starting to enjoy the Zoom setup. But we got to open up the town hall.
Well,
So
I
no
think
more, I
I
mean,
think
you
the
got to have
town,
face to face.
exactly. But that's the point, is that I think the school has it in their DNA, because you ever notice, like, and the one thing I always loved about Stoughton was that you never had snow days. They always found a way to keep the schools open even in the worst the weather, and we have a very like bold, brave kind of town when it comes to like how we think about getting kids to school. So I just think that same bold, brave attitude needs to permeate through the rest of the town. And I think we just have to find creative ways to do it without being at risk. And I think as we start to turn the corner with vaccines and the rest of it, I think we have to be brave enough to actually say, now's the time. We need to start scheduling live appearances for our important business of the town, as well as through the rest of the town. I know the private sector, I think, could benefit maybe through the health department coming in and say, let us inspect your building and let's see whether you can actually achieve greater, capacity with people in your building. Look at your ventilation, take a look at, social distancing within your building and spacing and all that, and encourage people to start opening their businesses up.
Right.
I think we need to get on a positive footing when it comes to how we get back open, and we have to do it obviously safely. But I just think that we just can't stay on our heels forever and kind of get into like a rut where we feel like we can never get out of. I think there comes a time when you have to just say, this is the time to open.
Forge ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
Next subject that I wanted to get your opinion on is the armory. There's something that we bought, like as you say, without a solid plan in the works. I think we paid $1 for it, so it was a good deal. But what's your thoughts about the armory and its possible use?
Well, the possible use, it was already voted. It's going to be the fire station 1,
Okay.
but if you notice some of the meetings, I try to pick up on the little thing. You ever notice there's like little things that make your ears perk up, like when you watch a meeting? It's not like, it's very subtle, but you can kind of hear like the winds, the way they're trying to shift, or it might be somebody's comments that make you feel like they're going to shift. They're talking about an over-engineered fire station to the point where you can't even turn the fire engines around the bend to come into the bays that they need. It's like, well, why'd you vote for an armory if this grand over-engineered building can't support the engines to actually use the bays? So they're actually already planting a negative into the thing that they already voted for. So
Why can't they just back up? I mean,
well, there's that.
take a look at
Yeah,
some of these.
there's that.
Take a look at some of these stations in Boston or even in Norwood. When they pull out, they get back to the station. The firefighters get out. They stop the traffic and they back the units up into the building.
Yeah.
So that kind of solves that
Yeah.
problem, I would
Well,
think.
I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second,
Uh-oh.
if I could indulge you on that.
Go.
The town, if you ever notice the town, we started years ago under engineering different projects, like Fire Station 2. It was under engineered and it had flaws with the HVAC and other things because we didn't use the high end, design architects and all these people. And it became, a problem where it became something where people had a lot of criticism over the work. Before that, you even had the police station. It's, within 20 years, they're already talking about it being obsolete. When you build something like that, you expect at least 50 years.
Sure.
So what on earth happened? So you got these. If you think about it, the project of 20 years ago or around that time frame, going in the wrong direction because you under-engineered and let's say we underfunded. I'll use that as a similar way to explain the same thing. To almost going the pendulum swinging in the complete opposite direction. And I think that you can hurt a town in two different ways. One, you could under invest in your town and watch people go away and create a ghost town because you under invested in your town. But I see the same problems happening with the town that over-engineers everything they do, where it becomes so expensive to live in the town, the gentrification that causes people to flee happens. Well, that's what's going on today. We've got the pendulum in the whole other direction, where you've got these gold star committees that are put together to and by the way, starting with a fund on something called a feasibility study. So imagine having a feasibility study where you never even talk about how much you could afford to spend, nor how you're going to pay for it. Like, are you going to borrow? You can use cash. None of that was ever talked about. Every action that's done on these committees is to over-engineer and then figure out how to pay for it later. So it's like they still to this day don't even know how they're going to be paid for. So I look at the word feasibility and I say, why is dollars and cents and getting something like, why didn't they tell the architect, how much of a fire station can I get for 20 million instead of over-engineering it at 32 million? How much does 20 million get you? How much does 15 million get you? They never start with that question. They only try to answer that question at the end, where you'd have to rip up all the design work that was done because you find out later that you couldn't afford it. So what I think that a lot of time gets wasted on these feasibility studies when they start in the wrong way, and so that's a big concern I have. But here's an idea.
I'm concerned about the fact that I'm listening to you talk about problems or opportunities that are happening in Stoughton, and you're sounding like you're kind of frustrated, and you sound like you really need to get in there, roll up your sleeves, and try to get some other people with a business attitude in there with you, and to solve these problems before they start happening again.
I do want to do that. It is, I think you hit it on the head there. But here's an idea though. So I'm going to throw my idea into the idea hat. We'll see if somebody wants to take the idea and do anything with it. So for the fire station one, they're talking about response time up in North Stoughton, up at the Armory, because you're losing all the area from the downtown south, because you have Freeman Street and South being almost like, well, we just created an obstacle to getting response time because we're moving so far north. The opposite was going to happen if they scrap the Armory and try to put it in line lumber. They're already talking about articles that are coming up in town meeting to flip out of the Armory because it's over-engineered and find a perfect spot in line lumber, which happens to be school property.
Yeah, you can swap it. Swap it out.
Well, but here's an idea. So keep the Armory, but don't try to bulldoze it. You just take off that wretched first floor piece of the building that's kind of bolted onto the front, and you rip that off. So then you got the really good bones of a building. The building is 70 years old, but that was built so strong it was able to hold tanks.
Right.
The building is rock solid. So since the bones of that building could probably last 150 years more, instead of these new buildings they build that could barely get you 100 years, some buildings we're seeing only get you 20. So why not take the bones of that Armory, make a smaller fire station, okay? Not lose Freeman Street. So you take the big engines, the ones that are hard to work on, because Freeman is the bays never grew, the engines got bigger, but obviously the bays in Freeman Street are too small for the bigger engines. You put the big engines up at the Armory because you can build a rock solid facility that could hold large equipment like a large fire engine. You keep Freeman Street to serve downtown and south. So you end up with two stations. So here's what you're getting. You're getting two renovation projects instead of anything new. You don't bulldoze anything, okay? You reconstruct Freeman and Armory. You could probably get both of those buildings done for under 20 million.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about one building that has to be bulldozed that's going to cost you 32 million.
Right.
The other thing it allows you to do, it allows you to take cash from the CPA, because the only thing holding the CPA back from helping out with the fire station is that they want to take people away from Freeman Street. that's a very historical building, that Freeman Street building. So why not attract CPA money, because we're going to maintain a 100-year-old building, and use cash that's already there to offset the borrowing that would have to occur on the rest of it.
Right.
So I think that you can actually get a solution that gets you response time to the north and the south. It solves the money problem because you're renovating instead of building new. By the way, the two other things, the police is another thing that you benefit from doing this, because you have so much extra space in Freeman Street, because you moved half of the firemen and engines and apparatus up to the north. You now have room to bring in the dispatch. The dispatch takes up a lot of space in the police station. So you move dispatch into Freeman Street. So now you're giving Donna McNamara, she has more elbow room at Rose Street.
Right. I think that you ought to, one of the ideas you just brought up or touched on, you should continue to explore, and that's the possibility of a municipal building being built on Line Lumber Road. Get together with the school committee and figure out how you can swap it off if it's possible to do it. I think that's a great idea. I don't.
Okay.
I'm not.
Well, everybody's got ideas. Yeah, everybody's got ideas, right?
Right. Well, got to use them.
Well, that's the thing. I just don't like the approach of over-engineering something and then having it dead on arrival because it costs too much. And I
think you've made that very clear. I think you've made that very clear, David. A quick.
By the way, the other thing, one more thing, the armory, you could actually build out the firing range in the basement. So you reestablish that so the police could have you let the police use the basement of the fire station up in the armory for practicing. They could use their firearms in the already built firing range down there.
Right. They used to have that set up in the current Rose Street location.
Oh, I didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
Downstairs, you used to have a firing range.
Yeah, they got a beautiful one they could renovate, right at the armory.
Good point. Well, we have a couple of minutes left, and I see you have something about the 4th of July, a pleasant subject, the 4th of July fireworks. Something
so
in the next couple of minutes that we can talk about?
Yeah, we took away the 4th of July for the past 2 years because of the construction of the high school. And, we've tried to kind of make up for it with these nice block parties in downtown, which were nice, But our town has always had a lot of pride with the way we had our 4th of July. So in order to restore that, I was thinking that with the high school already built, we then bring back the 4th of July with a huge 4th of July. Not just do it like we've always done it, but actually do it bringing in like the marching band. Maybe they could do the overture of 1812 and do something interesting. The way they do
a 21 gun salute.
Yeah, right. Just like the way they do with Lockhart up in the Boston.
There you go. But I think that the fireworks were funded by Costco or one of those companies.
IKEA,
yeah. Right.
Yep.
Maybe get them to do it again.
Yes. So I think we need to start bringing that back. And I hope we could do it in a grand way so that it restores that tradition that we've had.
We get that up there and we put you up there with the baton and have you leading the band as they come through the square.
We'll see about that.
But plenty of jobs for you to do, sir.
I guess so.
Okay. The final question is, when is the election?
Oh, April 6th.
April 6th. Yep. We have 2 openings?
There's 2 openings, and there's, I believe, 4 people running for the 2 openings.
Well, I wish you luck. You're a good guy, and it was a pleasure for me to get to know you. And I wish you luck, and may you win.
Thank you very much, Roy. It's a pleasure, and I enjoyed your interview immensely.
Okay.
And take care, everybody, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is Roy Cohen. I am about to sign off, and I hope you enjoyed the interview that we had with Dave, and consider him for one of the 2 positions. In the meantime, we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.